Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another how-to video in this little series I'm running here on my channel. We've already broken down how to splits, forearm stand, and headstand. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on crow or bakasana. And this is really exciting because I think this is quite an accessible arm balance. This is actually the first arm balance that I learned. So if you're, aiming for something like crane or a handstand, this is a really good place to start getting comfortable with balancing on your hands. So as always in these videos, I'm going to be breaking down the most important cues for the pose, to practice the pose safely, some of the exercises that you can do to build strength to hold the position, and then as always going over some don'ts. So if this interests you, just stay tuned and I hope that you pick up a tip or two to help you on your crow journey. So before we get into any of the cues and actually practicing bakasana, it's really important that your body is warm and that the areas that you're going to be using for this pose are primed. So I did actually put together a whole warm-up sequence for arm balances, working with compression of the core, warming up the wrists and the arms, and even stretching into the hamstrings that I will link to right now in the upper right-hand corner. And so if you're doing this video, follow along, please check that one out first so that your body is primed. And then going into some of the cues, working from the hands up. There's a lot that goes on when we're in bakasana, when we're in our arm balance. So coming onto your mat, I'll explain this. Feel free to demo it with me, or feel free to follow along with me, or just watch the video and then practice in your own time. But taking a look at what's going on in the hands. When we are balancing here, we're going to try to use all four corners of the hands. So not just keeping all of the weight in the butt of the wrist, but you want to make sure that you're distributing the weight throughout and that your fingers are there to help you balance. So the fingers are kind of your breaking point. So in bakasana, you need to push the weight forward in order to hold the pose. You need to kind of have this counterbalance of your butt and your shoulders. So if you find yourself pushing too far forward, your fingers will be there as a brake to help you stop. Next up, going kind of up the arm, you want to make sure that your elbows are pulled in, that the eye of the elbow is shining forward, and that that you're squeezing the hands kind of as if you were turning two jars to wrap the triceps in and pull the elbows back. So by doing this, by pulling the hands kind of away from each other, you're starting to squeeze, you're starting to activate into the entire arm, squeezing the triceps, you're stabilizing the shoulder joint, and you're starting to squeeze into the pecs, into the chest muscles, all of which will give you more support in the position. The more muscle recruitment you can have and engage, the more stable your crow will be, the less likely you will injure yourself, and just all around good things. So on that note, kind of going up from the hands now to the elbows, up to the shoulders, we want to make sure that our shoulder blades are pulling apart. So in order to do this, you push the floor away, pulling the shoulder blades apart, squeezing into the chest muscles. So coming into our kind of prep pose, some of the things we're looking at. Taking a look at the fingers. Pushing the fingers down into the floor, wrapping the triceps down, eye of the elbow pointing forward, so that when we bend, they're coming back and they stay parallel. They don't flare out. Supported position. Good. Push the floor away so that you pull the scapula apart, squeezing into the chest. All this will happen at the same time. Good. Next thing to note is where you choose to practice your crow on your arm. So there are a few different placements, and each student likes to practice differently, each teacher likes to teach it differently. And personally, I like to practice by placing my knees just above my elbow. So if you're looking at your arm right now and you bend your elbow, there's a little flat bone just above the elbow bone. This is kind of a perfect crow shelf, you can think of it as. Some people like to practice up on the tricep, and then when you get into another version of bakasana, crane, where the arms are straight, your knees will actually come up into the very top of the triceps, almost into your armpit. So you can work to practice that way if you're looking to practice for crow, prep for crow, but and personally in the past, I have preferred not to practice on the tricep. One, because it is a muscle, so it's not as stable, it wobbles, which will kind of hinder your balance. And two, I have found that it's quite painful and it gives you some pretty gnarly bruises. So try out both. what it would look like on the triceps is coming here on the floor, hands are parallel, fingers are spread wide, wrapping the triceps down, eye of the elbow pointing forward. You can either practice on the triceps or on this little flat bone that we just identified, bending the elbows slightly back, and you can push the knees onto the flat bone there. You can practice lifting one foot at a time and see which one you prefer. Okay, really important here that the elbows stay locked in, that you're not letting them come out, because then we're disengaging the chest, we're disengaging the shoulders, and we want to have as much strength recruited as possible. On that note, there are a few things that you can do to strengthen the body to be able to hold this, because it is a position that you do need upper body strength for. If you find, so it's a combination of strength and balance and endurance. So in order to support it, you need to have strong arms, and there are a few things, well actually I'll just go through the exercises that I would recommend that you practice in order to hold this safely. You can practice holding your high plank or your forearm plank to build some strength in the upper body, as well as bracing the core. And within your high plank, you can also become more familiar with what's going on in the shoulders. So you can practice depressing or retracting the shoulder blades together, pulling them apart, okay? This is one, because we want to work on pushing the floor away when we're in our crow. So this is one that you can practice there. Practicing your push-ups. Compression work. So anything where you're compressing, where you're, performing flexion, you're bending the upper body towards the lower body without the assistance of your hands to pull you in. You're working only with the strength of your core to hold you there, because in our crow, our knees are going to be pulled up tight into the chest. Okay, another way to practice this is something called a crow crunch. Wonderful work to strengthen the core to help you pull the knees in. Now that we've gone through some of the cues, some of the kind of obvious things that people experience when they are practicing this is the fear of falling. And speaking from experience, you can't fall, you're not that far from the floor, so you won't hurt yourself that badly. You might smack your nose or something, but you're only a few inches off of the ground. So I know it's counterintuitive, but when you're coming up into your crow, you really want to push the weight forward. And the more you can engage, the more balance you will have. So by that I mean thinking about it as a full body movement. Hands are on the floor. Pulling the elbows, the eye of the elbow forward, wrapping the triceps in. Slight bend here to find that flat bone. Knees coming up on top of the elbows. And then you're going to want to push equally forward here. So you're going to want to lean forward, lean into that falling feeling. And as you come up, maybe you want to practice just lifting one foot up at a time. Maybe that's enough, okay? Once you get to the point where you're practicing, even with both feet, lean forward and pull the heels up into the butt, flexing the feet or pointing the toes. Either one, as long as they're engaged. It looks a little bit prettier to point them, but as long as they're engaged. I know it seems counter what you want to do, but push the floor away, look forward, lean forward, pull the feet up into the butt, flex into the fingers, breathe, okay? If you're really scared of falling, you can always place a pillow down there. You should try practicing falling a few times, just so that you kind of help take that fear away. But as I said, speaking from personal experience, there's not too much damage you can do there. And if you aren't falling, it probably means that you're not trying to go far enough, that you're not really pushing your body to see what it can do or find that balance properly, because you may still be keeping a lot of the weight in your hands and you're not actually practicing the full grip that you can get with your fingers, and practice using those finger breaks when you lean too far forward to catch yourself from falling. So as far as some of our don'ts, 1, don't let the elbows flare out. Really dangerous. Don't let the shoulders retract towards one another. Don't disengage the core. So the whole time you should also be thinking about pulling the knees up into the chest. This is why I recommended those crow crunches, that you're pulling the knees up as much as you can into the chest rather than just dumping the weight forward. okay? And as this is an arm balance, if at any point, it's a lot on the wrist, so if at any point you feel that your wrists are starting to get a little bit sore, please stop, roll them out, maybe take a counter stretch and maybe call it a day, because the wrists are very delicate and it takes a long time to build strength in them. So if you're not used to putting a lot of weight on them, start slow and then work your way up with 5, 10, 15 minutes every day, rather than 1 hour a day, once every 2 weeks. It's gonna be really good for you in the long run. Make sure that you're practicing safe wrist health, starting with that warm up that I mentioned in the intro. And that's all we have for today's video on crow. If you enjoyed it or if you learned something, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe because I upload every week on Mondays and Thursdays. And if you all enjoyed this more casual approach to these how-to videos, kind of more studio style as I would teach it in a class, then please let me know down below. I'm happy to make more like this because I find that if you're following along, it's a nice way to practice the cues in time with me. So just let me know which one you prefer. And with that, happy practicing everybody. Best of luck in your crow journey, and I'll see you all here in my next video. Ciao guys. To get access to exclusive workout challenges, meditations, full-length yoga flows, and blog posts, check out patreon.com/Alexandra Templeton. For less than $10 a month, you'll have the tools you need to become your strongest and healthiest self from home. There's a link down below. Thanks for your support, and until next time, take care everybody.